Hi, my name is Matt Roberts. I've been teaching American government at a number of different schools since 2003. Right now, I work as an instructional designer at Grand Valley State University in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I also teach a class a semester as an adjunct professor in the political science department. For the last couple of years, I've been teaching exclusively online, and actually that online teaching has coincided exactly with my switch to using specifications grading in my courses. I posted a video a while back about the setup I use in Blackboard Learn in order to track the specifications grading system that I use in my course. That was always intended to be sort of a part one video, because even though Blackboard, which is the learning management system we use here at Grand Valley, even though I do deliver my course through Blackboard, I really find that it's just one notch above a nightmare when it comes to trying to keep track of the grades that students have in a specifications grading system. I can get the grade center, the faculty side of things, to look fairly usable, but the real problem is that students, in the view that they have of grades, see no organization whatsoever. And one of the important things about specs or standards-based grading is the fact that the scores that students receive are related to each other, and they're not just raw numbers to be analyzed. So I think it's also fair to say that I'm a bit of an edu-hacker, and as long as I've been teaching online and using specs grading, I've also been using my own gradebook system, which I designed purposefully to make tracking specifications grading a lot easier. I call it SpeXray, and I just wanted to give you a little tour of what it looks like. I'm going to show you a course from last semester, so this is with all the information already in there, and even final grades entered as well. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the fall course. And just a note, these are not my students' real names or even their real photos. SpeXray has a demo mode that allows me to swap out that information for fake names and pictures, so the identities of the innocent can be protected. When you first come into a course in SpeXray, you're presented with a dashboard view which shows all your students along with a few pieces of information. One is the grade that they've got in the course as a final grade. The other is the number of tokens that they currently have in the course. I use a token system much like described in the specs grading book. So from here, you can go to a couple of different places. The first thing I want to show you, though, is the interactive checklist. When I first built SpeXray, back before it was even called SpeXray, really what it was just a checklist system that showed the relationship between the different things that students were going to be scored on over the semester. Each letter grade has a number of blocks set up. All those have to be met in order to earn that letter grade. You can see that the student here has earned a C. As they complete all the requirements within a letter grade, a check mark shows up, and then the letter grades themselves actually sort of highlight. Down at the bottom of the screen, there's a list of optional modifiers. My specs grading setup right now includes a number of modifiers that kick in either to add a plus or a minus or even to lower a letter grade based upon a number of different conditions, and those can be triggered within SpeXray as well. So the symbols that you see here come in a couple of different flavors. One, if there is a requirement that students have to meet and there's no sort of options about it, it shows up in black as a black box, and then when it's met, it turns into a green check mark. If there are optional requirements, meaning, for example, that students can choose from a number of different assignments to meet them, they show up in this kind of a light blue color. And then when it's met, it turns into a check mark. And for these blue areas, if I click on them, it sort of turns into a list of all the different options that they have. So, for example, when it comes to thematics, there are 4 different assignments that they can choose from. And it says here they have to choose 2. Case law modules here as well come from options, and if I open it up, you can see a red symbol like this actually indicates that they did not receive a passing score at all. The system also allows for scores to be marked as progressing or some sort of equivalent. When you see that, there's a little triangle inside. It's blue when it's sort of in that optional view, but then for the individual ones, it turns out to be orange. And I use those colors throughout the system to track what scores are. This in and of itself was a great benefit because it allowed me to sort of see and keep track of the relationship between the work that students were doing and how that tied into final letter grades. I've built a lot around this system though. So for example, this little breadcrumb trail here, if I click on the name of the student, I'm taken to a page of information about that student where I can keep track of name, birth date, email, some other information, photo, and also a notes area. This column here is actually a couple of different ones sort of hidden behind a toggle. One is just the general information about the course as well as their tokens. The system will keep track of when tokens were used and when they were earned in different ways. If I've given a student an extension for any reason, it would show up here. Also, any notes that I've entered on assignments show up here in this view as well. And then there's also a flag view. I can put a number of different kinds of flags on assignments for various purposes. So this is the information view about the student. We just saw the checklist view for the student. There's also what I call the scores view. And in the scores view, basically it takes all the requirements throughout the course and allows you to see them for a student at a time. It groups things into what I call families. So for example here, there's a family of foundation modules, of which there are 2. The little indentation here shows that these different assessments can have sort of subcomponents. This view is the one that often gets used just for grading. I can actually control what score is assigned just from the pop-up menus there. This little speech bubble allows me to access some more detailed information. For example, this is where I can indicate how many tokens might have been used, such as for an extension, keep track of when it was submitted, keep track of a little information, for example, if they had a topic. And right now I've got 6 different colors of flags. And there's also the ability to, let me close that, come over here. There's also the ability to keep track of multiple attempts. So for example, this work was submitted with a first version and then there was a second one. Color coding makes it really easy to see where students are at. Green is passing or an exceptional score if they happen to get that for an assignment. Red is no pass and orange is a progressive of some sort. You can see that flags show up in this view as well. There are some assignments that can be entered not just as a score from a scale but also as a number. So for example here, actually come down here for these certification scores. This is a percentage correct based upon a quiz they took. In this case, I don't actually use the percentage, but what happens then is this serves as a trigger. So for example, over here you can see the terminology certification score is an 83, and there are actually then sort of 4 different triggers here. The calculator shows that this is a calculation, and then these are various sort of requirements for the different letter grades. So for example, to earn an A, you have to get an 80% on the terminology score. So this is the view of one student's scores. We can also sort of rotate the data around, and instead of looking at one student all scores, we can look at one assignment and all the students. So if this screen is a little bit narrower, this display is a table. I've just been playing around with some interface stuff. Extensions here are noted. The number in a circle indicates that there was a token used for some purpose, and in these cases these were tokens for extensions. If I click on the little text bubble, which is the same thing that you saw in the previous display, I can access it there. The term that I use for most of these assessments is requirement. I probably might want to move away from that term at some point, but one requirement can have sub-requirements. So this is a module which has these sort of different assignments in there. If I click on this button here, I get kind of a view which shows all of those sub-assignments together. I can also just go back to that one. Over here you'll notice 2 different little symbols next to a couple of assignments. I've actually built integrations with a couple of other services. So for Hypothesis is a tool for collective annotations. Trello is kind of a group Kanban board. Both of these have APIs that allow me to sort of pull information out. So for example, if I go to this one, I could actually then click on the hypothesis button for a student, and what would happen then is it actually would load in over here. Load in over here the comments that they made pulled from the hypothesis site for the assignment. Trello works similarly. So those are sort of the main views that I use as I'm actually sort of working on grading on a day-to-day basis. If I come up at the top, you'll notice there's the dashboard. I can get back to the dashboard view. There is just access to the list of all the students, and this can be sorted by various ways. The token information here is actually, when you click on it, you get a little summary. So they start with 5. The student got 6 and then used 4, so they have 7. You'll recognize these buttons as giving access to the checklist and to the score screen. I have a flags display that allows me to pull out information about students for whom I've thrown flags. This just allows me to monitor stuff. I also have a watch list view, which shows, in addition to flags, any student, any assignment where they have a progressing or a no pass score. This is just a way to keep track of who I should be nagging, if I should be nagging anyone. The requirements view here is then basically just a long list of all those requirements. You'll notice a little symbol here. I added some color coding that just allows me to know where things are for a particular assignment. The checkered flag means that basically we're done with it, but I can actually set it as being sort of planning, being active, meaning that's work that's being done right now, that grading is happening, or that it's been completed. There's a search feature built in which allows me to search either for students or for assignments and jump around really quickly. The grades view here basically works to set up your specs grading system. I think I'll do another video where I show myself setting up the new semester's work, so I'm not going to talk about that here. Just the other thing I want to show, there's a course calendar. This is... So yeah, I got to move into the past to look at this one. Basically what it does is it just puts dates onto the calendar from assignments, due dates. It also shows where students have received extensions on things. If I go into the settings view, I can actually add in then some of those events. So I designed this system to meet exactly how I want grading to work. I think it's a flexible and useful system. And it's definitely a lot easier than doing all of this in Blackboard. So I hope you enjoyed the tour. Like I said, I'll make another video where I show how to set up a course. But if you got any questions, comments, just let me know. I'd be happy to talk about this.